thanks to COVID, possibly the mentality of people reappearing and re-socializing might maybe bring a new mentality.
I have a small note on this, especially based on what Neil and Edwin were saying. They both mentioned this idea of the art in it, and especially since Karen kind of mentioned this distinction which happens between electronic music artists and other acts, whatever other acts. I feel that at times there's perhaps this mentality of the authorities thinking that an electronic music artist isn't an artist, but a bring abuse. And that's an issue because in reality, are they realizing that there is an art to being an electronic music performer? In the sense, I'm trying to bring about the idea that, listen, when DJs have to do what they do, it's not just being up on a stage, putting things together and just seeing people get smashed. This is actually a dedication, which means that you are carefully selecting your repertoire or creating the music before you perform to create the atmosphere. So if all these things are considered, and there is an appreciation that these people are artists in what they're doing, the same way that an artist preparing for an exhibition is, the same way that a musician trains lifelong to train their voice, or play the piano or their instruments, there is an art in it. And if it's not considered as such, then what is the electronic music artist? And are people really appreciating this? And especially when you also mentioned this idea of venues, I'm seeing this kind of DB, I'm calling it the DB phenomenon, where basically electronic music is always thought of, and this has been, for ages, just always has to be loud. So then venues who accept electronic music become limited because they think, oh no, electronic music equals massively bass, sight terrorizing sound, which isn't the case. I mean, I've seen even locally numbers of events where electronic music is played as a socializing kind of, not necessarily background thing, but even where people are meditating to it and kind of, okay, maybe they are using substances to get deeper in it, but even that idea of it being something which has to be loud is unfortunately creating a lot less places where it can be performed locally, at least. I mean, I've seen situations in places like let's say places in Europe where the government actually subsidizes clubs for proper soundproofing, or else allows kiosks in open parks to have electronic music. So I think this idea where electronic music has to be loud and devastating to the body and to anyone close to it, is quite damaging. Let's put it like that.
I mean, once electronic music is recognized as art or as good art and as appropriate as a cultural, a worthwhile cultural pursuit, then everything changes because you have government investment, you have opportunities open up for it to become part and parcel of what is considered to be good culture. So I think for as long as that's not the case, then it is pushed to the margin, and it's kind of limited in what in how it can express itself and where and under what conditions, and how people should, I don't know, should view it, even as like something that is not a worthwhile pursuit. But I would have expected for festivals, big festivals, international festivals, to change the culture in Malta, to open up the, I don't know, the perspectives around electronic dance music. Mark.
I want to add what the others were saying is, first of all, I think Tina will like this as well and agree with me, is in Malta we have a lot of amazing locations where I imagine, an amazing event going on there. But obviously, since it's electronic music, it's always a no-no. They don't see it like electronic music, as you said. It's an art form. At the end of the day, it's art. It's another way of expressing yourself. It's either musical, by music, art, design, whatever. Um, and funny enough, I mean, who's ever been to abroad from Malta, most of the time is even lately I'm seeing a lot of like electronic music artists collaborating with, I don't know, fashion artists or clubs with car makers. In Germany, this is very popular. It's they always see electronic music as something. I don't know. It's always the underdog. Since we don't get the masses and have a lot of people who these commercial mainstream artists, whatever, they see us as like serie C. It's like we don't we're not important enough. I know even from funds, for example, having experience myself, asking for a grant or a fund, nothing much, and you get turned down because it's electronic music, and they tell you we have other important stuff to do. And then you see festivals, with famous, I don't want to mention names, famous Italian artists or commercial bands. And sorry, Julia. So yes, but that's the thing. I as an artist as well, I'm a designer. I see, creating amazing events in iconic locations in Malta, but it will be impossible to do. Why? Because it's electronic music. That's all.
And something that's, I mean, continuing on the argument of an electronic music artist, even now moving, myself, I'm a producer, but talking about the DJ, the skill and the ability of a DJ to work a crowd. What does that working a crowd mean? If the crowd truly enjoys or is passionate about the style of music, the DJ would be skilled in literally taking them to a journey, and even taking them through a journey and taking care of them their own, I would say, well-being, because as the journey gets more, like movement, as the tempo rises, DJ is capable of controlling. Even it's like a workout when you have the workout on the treadmill with the hill and then going to a valley and then going downhill. DJ is capable of doing that, and is capable of creating a workout for his, literally, for the crowd. And even is a DJ and a dance music producer is capable of working with frequencies. We all know that the sub frequencies instigate. They come from the ground. They are the lowest frequencies, and instigate, and particular rhythms instigate dancing in themselves. So the reflex action of dancing is triggered. So I mean, as all other forms of art, possibly it will be appreciated after years. Generally, the contemporary, art is always considered to be, like not worthwhile of studying, or not worthwhile of giving it the attention it needs. But the element I remember myself, and this is an interesting anecdote. When I started off doing music, I was even briefed about what frequencies work with what crowds, and 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 with what type of music you need to sort of work the crowds, and which in itself is fascinating. I mean, from a research perspective, from an artistic, from a scientific perspective, because honestly, I've been to hundreds of events, and the stigma about these being like Sodom and Gomorrah, like nothing of that. People are friends. People make friends there. You meet new friends, and you literally enjoy and joke all the time, and have fun, in a safe way. So unfortunately, this is a really, really a pity it's a really pity that as Mark is saying, not much encouragement then is given for the truly passionate, I would say, promoters or even organizers to pursue passion for excellence. I would say, as Tina was saying, I've been to events held in halls with the appropriate type of music that were literally inspirational, even to meditate. You know, they were really. Was then I've been to other places where the sound was really properly made, and literally you start moving without even. And there were times when I wasn't very much, I would possibly coming out of a cold, and literally, it's like when you go to a football match and you feel better after. I mean, this is the feeling. I mean, and truly, even after COVID, we need to move. You know, we need movements. We don't. I mean, let's forget about the stigma behind this, because this is healthy for the mind in general. So I believe electronic dance music, especially the rhythms behind it, and this, I would say, the substance that emanates from sound, because the stimulation that sound gives to the body is also we've been approached even by researchers in the medical field about how one can explore certain frequencies that are really beneficial to the body in general. So I'm trying to move now to talking about the substance of sound, which in itself I believe is a fascinating field, and thus, especially, I wouldn't say us, but especially the DJs that are the masters of controlling crowds, in that they know how if they see a crowd that is forced maybe um, with the morale low, they try to give that booster to the crowd, and suddenly the crowd is moving, and suddenly the crowd is enjoying, and there's a famous drop and whatever. I mean, I think we're lucky to be living in these times, because these are things that maybe past generations didn't have an idea. I mean, the mixing between one track and another, the seamless set. And to this extent, I would really like that electronic music, it needs to be celebrated rather than stigmatized. I mean, it needs to be celebrated, because to an extent, when electronic music exploded, the movement after the Cold War, generally there were times when there were little protests around. There were people were all friends. They used to go to these big events, and they used to flock there, and generally the atmosphere was that of friendship. It wasn't. There were no mass rallies. There were no mass demonstrations. No tear gas. Even though in Malta we had one particular episode, but but we'll leave that to whoever goes and looks at the electronica session. I think session 3. Yes. So, but anyway, so in general, I believe that electronic music in itself provides, I would say, beneficial sound substance to the body, and should be celebrated rather than stigmatized, because in essence it's a very, I would say, it's a form of art, and needs to be respected.
And adding to that, I think, I mean, how I see it personally, the scientific aspect you just mentioned about the sound, and literally the science sound of it, and how it sort of reacts with the body. I believe most of the people, and that's why we are here sort of talking about like the use of substances with electronic music. I believe most of the people choose to have this amount of substance, for example, because they know that even the science aspect around the substance and the science aspect about the music really interact each other well. And this I mean, there has been multiple scientific research about it, that although it's like a more a more fun thing, it's even more rather like a rebuilding and like an enhancement thing. So there's that line where people need to distinguish about the enhancement. I mean, we're not talking about, I mean, I'm not even talking about substances that you take in a club. There are substances that the people take that can alter certain cells in your body, that can ultimately alter DNA coming for the next generations. So these substances are literally everywhere around us. So if there is a good backing scientific research about it, I I highly believe that with education, this thing can take creative people, for example, to an even higher level. Mentioning, for example, the artist, like Edwin said before, I highly believe that half of the music we have today, it was more or less inspired by substances experiences, and there are multiple this, I mean, not only in the music or electronic industry, but in each and every artistic aspect, from cinema to like visual arts to each and every aspect. But of course, the the fine line is there between, like what Karen said, the use and abuse, and that's where the education has to come in.
And in fact, based on this, and even tying to what Karen mentioned, because we're really going into quite a deep side of what the substance of sound and electronic music events can do. And I know Karen mentioned the idea of big events coming to Malta, and kind of how these have left their impact, and whether they're kind of I mean, whether it was a beneficial thing or something which had a downside. And really always mentioning this idea of differentiating. There are events which are meant for people to just that hedonism side of the event, you know, those massive club events which are just meant for people to take out all emotion and, you know, just get smashed basically. Even people who don't want to get smashed also go, obviously, but I feel there are events which have this intention of providing really good music for people to just celebrate and go all out to. And then there are events which do have a deeper side and are also intended for be through artists going into a more scientific side of sound, and you know, the way the events are practiced, the build up of the event. So if these events aren't kind of differentiated, the issue is that there isn't going to be a line drawn between these massive events coming to Malta and leaving their impact, and these events, and the difference between the events which want to go deeper with their audiences. So with big events which have come locally, unfortunately I have heard of locals who aren't in the scene complain and get really upset about the impact the event left in their locality, for example, be it the immense pollution of traffic, or the pollution of just rubbish and the aftermath of the event. So if these are what they're getting, especially when they're promoted at the scale of these big events. If all they're getting is, okay, people come get smashed and leave us with the carcass of it all, then obviously there is going to be a bit of a unfortunate impact left to electronic music. So on this kind of scenario, I've always thought that you know, environmental responsibility for these big events is also put into the mix, that these places aren't only given these prime locations, but they're told, listen, you have to leave them in the same state you found them, not just the location but the surrounding area. And only that way can these big events, even if they're not, you know, intended to go deep as some smaller local events may want to do, but they're also given a responsibility for the electronic music scene in Malta, because otherwise it's just exploited, you know.
But I reckon part of the problem is that, you know, underground scene is not visible to people. So the only thing that's visible is these big events. And so they assume they shape an idea about the scene based on the experience of what, like, you know, the kind of tourist mega event that doesn't have any social or environmental consciousness to it. And I think that happens a lot, and it gives the scene like a bad name or a bad, you know, reputation or whatever. Yeah.
I think
And
appreciation. So go on, Mark. Go on.
I want to add something as well. These big events, most of the time, as Tina said, people go to get off their head. They're not meant for anything else. What the difference is in electronic music events, most of the time, the substance abuse is not to get off your head, but to enhance the experience of the event. Certain sounds go with certain substances. They enhance the journey. As Edwin and Tina were saying, that DJs create journey. For me, they create stories. Every DJ creates a story, and whoever attended to an electronic event knows about it. And unfortunately, substance abuse is taken to enhance this story or journey, whatever you want. But I don't think that all these big events that came to Malta left an impact. Unfortunately, I think it left a more negative effect because they create, as Tina was saying, a mess after. There's a mess. I mean, and people who don't know the difference between electronic music and the mainstream music will not distinguish between the two. So they say, it was a party, a festival, and that's it. Afterwards, it's a disaster. And that's all.
And this is the point. It's about the curation of these events, because another aspect is the blanket statements and the blanket, I would say, labeling of the scene in general. That is generally based, is the standard is taken on the level of something that created I would say, how do you say it, something that created a shock. So that all the scene then is stigmatized. Case in point, last year when a badly organized event turned out to lead to an outbreak of COVID. So immediately the electronic music scene was seen as a proliferation of COVID. It was seen as someone who was greedy, who wanted to take over a hotel, which was truly, I would believe, even the hotel itself had the responsibility not to take up that event. Um, Eventually, after that, we suffered the consequences for over a year. I'd say standing events were all banned, and even while in Europe there was a reopening, with a 90% plus vaccination rate in Malta, still we didn't have standing events. So we can imagine. I would say the opportunity is always taken to stigmatize this thing, and as being stated by my friends here, the curation behind these. There are some events that are really curated fantastically well. Even the selection of the DJs, even the music selection starts from a journey and is made to literally take the crowd or the audience through a journey. So it gives you relaxing music at start, and then it builds till then it relaxes you back to the state when you can go back home and drive safely back home. But unfortunately, and maybe with electronic music Malta, we are changing this, especially to the places, because we've finally seen that, I would say, some light at the end of the tunnel as to organizing electronic music events in magical, or I would say in special places in Malta, especially historical places. Possibly this might be changing, but I think the message, we need to stress on the message and stress in a structured fashion. And I truly believe in the dialogue and in trying to and trying to make most of, because we have friends in the cultural sector that are truly supporters of what we're doing. Electronic music now has been with us for 30 odd years. So what that means that some of the, I would say, veterans in the scene now can possibly speak in a more fluent manner and bring the message out in a more, I would say, mature fashion than possibly younger generations that might, or younger generations that might be too ambitious to speak about this, because let's face it, the trait of the younger generations nowadays is to rise fast and quickly and to high places. And it's the problem of the entire world. But anyway, so I mean, I think we should persevere. We should. So I'm a positive person, and I think that bit by bit we can drive the message home, and
And I think you're right in saying that 30 odd years is when you reach maturity, you know? So it's like, it's that point where you're like, we know now, we've got experience.
But at least you can relate, you know, which is the most important thing. You can say a story, say, because once this happened and that, you know, and association is the best way to drive a message home, especially with the authorities, because once you have a background of experience, even when the organization of events, and this is very much appreciated, hopefully.
We've lost someone. We lost Mark. But yeah. I mean, this has been a great discussion, and I just think that I would just keep going because I'm so interested. But I think it's probably, yeah, we should probably wrap up. We got one last question for you, or one last thing.
So this conversation is really interesting, and as Julia was saying, we could stay here for longer. But you mentioned a lot of interesting things,
They're United
especially.
playing.
No, I will not take long. You mentioned a lot of interesting things, especially education. This was mainly a main topic throughout the discussion, apart from stigma and discrimination acting as direct barriers to a lot of different things, from education to opportunities to organize better and healthier or safer events. I wanted to ask you, please, if you could propose 3 changes you would like to see in the electronic music scene, or how maybe you find a particular aspect that is. Hi, Mark.
Sorry.
So no worries. So I'm asking as a last question, if you could mention 3 things that you would like to see changed in relation to electronic music in Malta. So maybe I start with Tina, this is the fashionable thing today to do. And maybe, I don't know, you jump one after the other.
Okay, so I can't say I was prepared for these 3 pointers, but I would say a bit more with regards to artists and promoters, possibly, especially not being afraid to look into alternative spaces to propagate their sound. And when I say spaces, I don't necessarily mean venues only, but also kind of looking into how they can reach their audiences in places where they might not expect a club. So this element of being playful is something I really believe in. Also, definitely at events, having things which I know, like drug testing kits, for example, can be a bit dangerous because some people might think that they're a kind of a mouse trap, you know. Someone goes to ask for a drug testing kit, it's a CID, and they get caught out, whatever. So even if they're just leaflets to start off with, or a QR code so that it's not printed on paper, which kind of can lead people into, I don't know, knowing the different pills around, the different substances which are going around. If you're a bit of a paranoid person, don't take this. If you suffer from low blood pressure, don't take this. You know, these kind of anything which, you know, substantial information which could be shared. And also possibly for artists not to be afraid to look for opportunities and put themselves out there as being electronic music artists, no matter what they do, no matter where they are in life, just to embrace it and to become a part of the community, because the only way it can move forward is if it keeps growing. So, and based on that and local and bigger events, you know, that I have to say a bit of a positive side of international DJs being brought locally. It's that, you know, younger artists they kind of can look up to that and say, okay, listen, I can meet this person, I can listen to him locally. So local large scale events have left that good impact as well.
Okay, so Mark, maybe?
So, what I would like to see changes, there are various things, but it would take forever. First and foremost, I want to continue where I know three, where Tina left. I wish and I want and I will work hard to put more exposure in local electronic music artists abroad, because we always talk about the international artists. We never give enough credit to the local artists, which I believe, having the Unmute platform, I receive a lot of mixes, productions. We have very, 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 very talented artists in Malta. And this is something that I wish to see. I mean, to see more Maltese artists out there, abroad, in festivals, clubs. That is one of my main top wish. I wish to see as well more education on substance abuse. Hopefully one day the stigma will disappear. It's hard, but I believe that one day we can get there together. And also, I wish that the authorities give us more opportunities in regards to fundings, offer us more venues, not clubs. When I say venues, not clubs, other locations on the island. And those are my three top ones.
Thank you very much, Mark. Neil, please, and then
So,
Dulce Sinfondus,
the
Edwin.
topic we have today, I think the first thing that I would like to be changed, and I have discussed it with Karen even before. I think clubs and each and every club should give free water to each and every person that actually requests it. I mean, this is something that wherever I played abroad, I always had the opportunity to just go get a glass of water, and that's it. There are a lot of scientific researches that people are mostly at harm when they are getting dehydrated. So that's one of the main things I would change. It's a small thing because nowadays there are even systems that you can invest in, and it's gonna be fairly cheap for the club to do. And of course, this should be the clubs, sorry, should be helped by the government as well for them to be able to accomplish this. Another thing I would like to see changing is the actual people, because most of the time you see, I mean, people maybe they talk about the substances they take only during the event or literally there and then. I'd like to see more awareness and more people talking with each other of and sort of bringing more awareness to each other. And I believe there should be more platforms where people could do so, even maybe anonymously. So that's something I would really like to see. And another thing, a bit more technical, but still, I'd like to see more clubs being standardized with actual acoustics and actual readings. So, I mean, the people can enjoy and get their experience more enhanced while not sort of abusing your body with like noises and unwanted loudness of volume. So that can help both the art and both the people enjoying with the experience. Those are the three things I would change. I mean, to be fair, the clubs lately are taking the sound aspect of things a bit more seriously. They know technology is evolving. They know each and every DJ and artist is looking for a better quality sounding club to perform. So hopefully this is improving. But of course, it's better that we keep on going to that direction. That's the three for me.
Thank you, Neil. Edwin?
Well, continuing on what Neil is saying, definitely the first thing that I would like to see is as a proper, seriously regulated, in general, entertainment scene, in which venues are properly regulated, venues that are clubs are regulated as clubs, not as bars. And hand in hand with that is a reform in the ethical standards of law enforcement. In Malta, definitely one of the biggest problems is enforcement of regulation, and maybe it's more about you have either it's being too relaxed, or it being on the other hand when people start grumbling that nothing is being done, it gets the other extreme. It should be in between. So there should be an ethical, I would say, way of behavior, and that I would say the police force would be actually your friend, your big brother, not like your the one that takes you to jail, or that gives you a slap or slaps you or whatever, or tases you. I mean this is the ideal world. I mean it's easy to say and hard to implement, but that would be the ideal, I would say, approach. Secondly, I would like a community that celebrates itself. So positivity. Celebrate yourself. Be proud of what you do, of your achievements or whatever you do. That's very important, because that definitely gives, in general, then drives to the third aspect that I really would love to see more of, is originality and creativity in the local sector. In general, unfortunately, there were a couple of individuals that passed away that were literally innovators in Malta. We miss them so much, and instead of celebrating their spirit, we are celebrating a concept that they created, and we're still rehashing it for 20 odd years. I'm not going to mention the actual event, but rather than celebrating the principle behind someone being creative and innovative. And I would believe that so as to be able to tackle this issue that we're mentioning here, creativity and innovation are key. So one has to go to the authorities, to the artistic authorities, and come up with concepts. And one should not be afraid to even involve universities and to involve academics in it, because that in itself gives you a passport, I would say, to much more respect. I mean, I can say this from first-hand experience with Electronic Music Malta, because I've involved academics, because I truly love being. I'm a nerd myself, so I had to mention this. But let's face it, even in business in Malta, we try to like play darts when it comes to business, rather than researching a market and trying out, feeler, and then strike it hard, and maybe create a business opportunity. The same with the art. I mean, there's nothing like, and I'm seeing here, and they are part of the crowd there that are involved in research in the art, and researching the crowd too. So I think the way forward, it looks promising, because finally we're changing a bit. But I think the third and the final point I'm making, the originality and the creativity element is key.
Here. I mean, I love that. Also, especially the part where you're just thinking about reaching beyond the community and trying to create alliances, whilst also being responsible for educating other people who don't understand the culture, and understand it in a way that isn't mediated by, you know, cultural, like wrong representations, whether they come from the media or politicians or whatever. So I think, we can all go away feeling positive, like we've got a job to do, but things are going to change, and we're going to be part of that change, hopefully. Yay! Exactly. Thank you so much, everyone, for taking the time to participate to this. And I hope to see you sometime in Malta. And if not, then I just look forward to continuing to be witness to what you do with Unmute, with Electronic Music Malta, and all your projects. So all the best of it. All the best, and thank you so much for taking part.
If you're in Malta, you should come to my club night.
Yeah, definitely. I'll be there. I'll be there with bells on.
Thank you all for
Have a nice
participating.
evening.
Thanks. Good night, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye bye. Take
Bye-bye.
care. Bye.